Welcome to the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast, where we help farmers, ranchers, and business owners create a seamless transition plan for the future. From retirement to ownership transfer, we protect what you've built and guide you every step of the way.
Hello, all. Welcome back to Pathfinder Legacy. I'm going to continue my conversation here with the Dr. Bruce Pedersen, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine here in Watford City, North Dakota. So last time we were visiting with Dr. Bruce about his family background, so forth, with where they're at in north central Nebraska and how your parents, the history, the legacy that they've provided for you and your sisters. And when we talk legacy, we're not just talking about tangible items. We're talking about the family history. We're talking about what they did to build on that free base. So you have those memories to come back to and come back to the farm, the family home. So we were talking about that. And Dr. Bruce, this is a little bit more how, when your dad passed away, it was kind of it was during COVID. So it was not something that anybody could plan for. It came on rather quickly. Your dad passing, and how your mom was prepared for that. Was she prepared? Maybe not always.
Yeah, I don't know if you can, like I said, she was like we all were, but yeah, you can never completely prepare, which is another reason to have it work, because you're not going to be in emotional state to deal with it. But they had together, predominantly my dad had a trust in line, and he had some insurances and some different things that, like I say, it was just, a loss. You're just devastated, especially when it comes. I think at any time, even when you expect it, you still expect it. But no, Mom, we have a lot of that stuff in order, but it's looking back, and even as we, like a lot of things in life, it's like, oh man, you kind of forget. And then it's like, oh, that one's my turn. If we had the more details, the better. My brother-in-law, his father died young from a brain tumor, but he had the ability, he knew it was coming. So he literally had his funeral announcements printed out. And he was one of those, like, an amazing person as well. Yeah, to answer your question, I would give us probably a B to B minus in overall preparedness from funerals, the plot and one of my memories about Dad's funeral is it was two things. Is one, it was kind of in that stage of COVID where we really didn't know how it was going to pan out, or the importance of distancing and all the other stuff. But they were supposed to have funerals, right?
Right.
And that's one of my regrets is that, and the nurses at this little hospital in Nebraska bent the rules to the extent that they could. Is we got to be there with him, and we did some of that. At his graveside, there was like over 200 people.
Oh my gosh. And you were outside. So you were outside.
Everybody was together around the graveside, but still, and then how much you just tell them.
Right.
Yeah. So if it was a true pandemic, some of those things take place. Yeah, Mom, she did the part really well, hold it together. And then just, I learned to COVID too. There was, people bringing food.
Support system.
Oh, yeah.
A good support system.
Yeah, but I guess that's wherever you find a flag, you always still there, but it's.
Yeah. I do see it in our small towns, rural and so forth, that everyone really comes together and connects and makes sure that their family, friends, neighbors are taken care of and looked after and so forth. So it's so different than in more of the larger areas, but this small rural, we're still seeing that people are doing that. And it's so important for mental health and for their well-being. And your mom is doing well and thriving and so forth, as you mentioned in the last episode. She's living on the farm. Her and your dad lived. But you guys, when you were working on your dad's estate, he had a plan. You said he had his will, he had a trust and so forth. So he had a plan, but yet you still had to administer that plan. And you still had to work that plan and make sure that everything was taken care of. Locating the assets if you needed to and having things evaluated and so forth. Do you want to expand on that a little bit, Dr. Bruce?
Sure. No, I think, and it is evolving, trying to educate yourself. And it's a lot to wrap your head around, from the tax accounting, the ever-changing wealth tax, and the government trying to get their hooks in this transfer of wealth. So, yeah, it was and still is an education process. But I think the starting point is, what is the intent? And some of the people don't know what they don't know. So, you can give cash, is it going to be divided out and that's it? And then, you have the ongoing needs of the survivor. So we're taking care of all first and foremost. Whatever happens, you have to sell everything off. She gets, that's still priority. But in the end, you start asking these questions of what has the most value. And it's not always money for us, but it was this geographical space on the planet that we would always go to. So that's what we decided to preserve and to pass on for as many generations as we can. As the attorneys will tell you, it's not forever, is not necessarily possible, but you come pretty close.
You've come pretty close. You can go, if you can have a trust or something set up out there, a corporation where you can say, all right, 100 years. I know when I was in the banking industry, we would say something that the trust in the state of North Dakota could go for 100 years past the death of the last one that was surviving at the time that you passed away. Now, whether or not that's the same sort of pass-through entity that you're using, whether in a trust or corporation, but knowing what the bylaws and what the family intention is, and everyone's all on the same page to make sure that they keep it moving that way. Did you have hiccups with family members or hurdles?
Not so much. We had, again, it's kind of a pass-through, so we do want to take care, I think the other one, and I was told my mom, I'm the least crazy of all of them. But we're not all crazy. So, but you kind of have to have one session, the voting, someone really needs to be a decision maker and be fair. It's almost like political. What's the best form of democracies are great, but things can get bogged down in a sale force. So as long as you're aligned with the spirit and the intent of the founders, the matriarch and patriarch of the family, that executor has to be in line. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have different family members. So there's going to be nuances that, we want to take care of this person. We want everyone to be able to partake. We're still working through a family constitution, family bill of rights, some of these things. And then a family bank. Our goal is to just make this property sustainable. But in the end, I think there will be kind of a war chest found that can be available for either emergencies or to help young people get a down payment. And then I've seen that my brother-in-law, like I said, we've kind of aggregated a lot of input from what, he did, my father-in-law, and what my dad did as well.
So you're kind of going together full circle from your side of the family to your wife's other side of the family, making sure that you guys you've learned things to be able to share with each other and both sides. So you've got this setting up to make sure you've got this geographical location there for future use, maybe some funds if beneficiaries, grandchildren, so forth, if they need help with something, there are funds possibly available to help, but to really preserve that family legacy and keep it there. So now on your wife's side of the family, you guys have also had some planning things and experiences that you guys have done as well, or working towards maybe some of those. Actually, I should take a step back. Was there anything else that you wanted to share on your mom's side of the family before I switch gears to?
No, like I said, I think the family is family. So and we're fortunate enough to not have a lot of split families, which really is complicated. So we tried to keep it true to bloodlines, meaning that there's 14 nieces, nephews, grandkids between my kids and my sister's kids. So they're really the heirs that we're preparing this for. We're still going to use it, but we're teeing it up for that next generation. So I think that to just reach out, none of us are an island, so we've got multiple family points, and I think we've done a pretty good job of using and comparing and aggregating some of those resources. Even as a family, and this is kind of off topic, but even as you grow and you show wealth, like a family bank, if you can loan from within family, you have to treat it like a bank, you can't be loosey-goosey, and I think that's true on the succession planning too. The more clarity, the more details that you can define, the less feelings you hear, the less questions there are.
That's right.
What's fair?
Creating that documentation so it's available for them to use, but hey, this isn't just a gift. This is a loan to you. But they're our documentations and so forth is taken care of. So that way, but for them to know that, hey, you're not giving Johnny preferential treatment over what you would give Jane. Right. That it's there for the family to use, but they might not have credit. There might be other issues at the time. They're just young, they're starting out. So having that there for family, that's a huge legacy there alone have that you can create your own family legacy. You don't want to say empire, but keeping them.
I think it is. It's a micro, and it's some of the, nepotism takes a bad rap, but it's got its place. And sometimes, you're born into, I've had this conversation a lot with my oldest son about privilege, and I always view privilege as a responsibility. So, and that's where you get into I don't know if we've even touched on this yet, but the sustainability of the legacy, like choosing which nonprofits you want to give to, or, not, we call it goose food. Like you don't want to kill the goose, but it's still, creating something that's going to benefit not just the family, like that altruistic, philosophical, too much is given, much is expected. And maybe a off topic there, but the value of looking at your whole family, not just parental lines, your maternal lines, or like that knowledge base that you bring to the table is really, really helpful. And the more you can plan, it's just like it's going to really save a lot.
Well, doing good was what they worked hard for. It's good to be able to take care of the family members as well and make sure within the family empire that you are taking care of your heritage first and foremost, but also any philanthropic desires or needs to be able to see that money do good and giving in that way as well. Because we're thriving in areas and we want to be able to take care of those and specific charitable giving.
Yep. And that's where I like, accountability, or we have 2 or 3 that Heather and I have given consistently to over the years, and either time and or money. And it's just rewarding. And I know that's how they depend, and the more regular installments are better than those just one-time gifts.
Than just in a lump sum gift. Yeah. Giving of your time and your talents.
Connections.
Yep. Yeah, more so than just on the monetary side.
Yeah.
Anything else on your side or your mom's side before we're going to shift gears to what you've seen with you personally, yours with you and your life, and what you've seen on your website of the families? Anything else you want to share?
I just think that the power of a place to connect, like family reunions, and it's getting harder and harder as we become more spread out. I just think those meetings, those FaceTime meetings, I think that's how our world needs that. Like I say, FaceTime is great, and I'm glad it's done for my mom, but there's no substitute for real. And this property, this vision that I'm trying to carry on from my mom and dad is about that face. So you have family reunions on the property, and again, trying to do dual purpose of cash flow and retain a space. The more, and even with meetings through these succession plan, is the more you talk about, used to be more taboo. It was like, oh, the will. You wouldn't know about the will until the funeral. And like we were discussing earlier, it's like, no, that's not right. I think you need to get this stuff out on the table before the generation clicks over.
I think it's really important for them to know what your intentions are, or whoever that plan, that whether it's your mom or yourself, and what you're doing for your children, or what your mom did for you and your siblings is having it out on the table. Because how do you guys know what type of legacy she wants to carry on and what her vision is if she's not sharing that with you and discussing it? It's so different than what it was done, probably even 20 years ago. There's no reading of the will anymore. When someone passes away, typically the attorneys will mail it out to you. You read it on your own, and then if you have questions, you come back. But it's not like a movie scene where they're all sitting in a room and reading the will and saying, okay, you get this bucket, you get this box, and so forth. So it's very different to what reality is. And I think that was portrayed to us years ago. But it is good to have it all on the table so you can discuss it. And you know what? Some people might not be happy with it. But it is what it is. And this is what my intentions are. And this is where I'm going to, what I want done with my estate.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be someone's going to feel slighted, or maybe entitled is the wrong word. But yeah, there's expectation. I think setting those ground rules early that, we're not entitled to anything. They gave us life itself, and that's enough. And, that's our own personal philosophy. I think the more that gets carried on, and I know that, so with Heather and I, the way we would always fill out relatives and went to a foreign country to travel, like, oh, we're going to probably die, so you might as well have or, you get on a plane or something. And that's not completely wrong. But when the kids were younger, I think this is the thing too. It doesn't ever stop changing because you need to, and you don't want to, and I still struggle with this. You don't want to penalize the people that do well.
Right.
Like sometimes it seems like the ones that didn't do as well in life. And sometimes there are reasons, like say somebody became a public servant. And that's where some of these nuances are. But to be as fair and open with your intent of what you want to do with it. I think we've talked about this. There's got to be some data on, like, winning a lotto just doesn't have good outcomes.
Right.
So why do it? Like, what's just giving a gift without strings? Kind of back when the kids were young, we made it like you had to get college degree. You had to do, like, you wouldn't get anything until you met these milestones or kind of pop up from the grave type of thing.
Right.
But it's not all that. And
controlling with strings attached, but making sure that they meet these requirements. Otherwise, why reward them?
Yeah.
If they're not going to, you want them to be assets of society and contribute.
Yeah.
And not just be what I would call trust babies.
Oh, yeah. And we, like I say, in Sun Valley, where my father-in-law lives, and there's a lot of trust funders. And I'm not saying there's not good, but typically not.
There's going to be some black sheep in the family going on there where they're not always doing good with that money.
Yeah. So I think assurances or filters or some way to, and that's what we're trying to evolve. That's what I'm saying. It's no. It just, the first is like, no, nobody gets free lunch. It's not a handout.
I think that's a great way to look at it, and wish more and more families would see it that way instead of saying, well, we're spending your kids' inheritance. I've heard people say that we're spending your inheritance. So you've worked hard for that money. You take it and you use it. There's no requirement that you are to provide for my retirement at the time after you're gone. And you said it perfectly earlier. Say that again. You said I've given you life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing that also, again, comes from a really, really fortunate to have a really solid, good family, but that safety net of knowing that you could come back. Like even, the support, not necessarily the financial, but knowing that you had your safety net or your network to go to is hugely valuable. And that's where, I don't know if you can, it's beyond monetary. And that's kind of what, even with keeping the place, sure, it's got a dollar amount in the open market, but to us, it's exponential value to the energy and the memories and what that's all provided, that's safety net, if you will.
Right. Legacy is so much more than just a dollar sign.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that encompass that without being just something that you could just take and go write a check for.
Yeah. Yeah. The currency is not just dollars in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
that is very, very true. Very well said. There's, at the end of the day, I'm sure most of them are very lonely at some point.
No connection. And again, I always joke too about, I was going to leave everything to my blue healer. Like the connection of animals and people. And that's one of the things I always ask about. Where do we pet on the financial statement?
Right. Yeah, very, very much so. Because you see that in your work life every day. You see those people that are, their pets are their family.
Yeah. And then you see a lot of times when if a family member dies and then that pet goes to the next family, and then when the pet dies, you see all this emotion and like a connection between that person and their connections, family connections, friendships. And money sometimes clouds that, I think. So it can be negative, but if it's used properly, it's just a tool.
That's right. Yeah, it's a tool. It's a way, a means as a roadmap to travel to get to the next accomplishment that needs to be done for passing on to the next generation.
Yeah. I don't know how you communicate with the new daughter. Julie doesn't bring any more happiness and many a relationship, or, I think that's the deal about families is profit in your own land, and the whole, how the more familiar we are, the easier it is to slay or hurt each other. We've been pretty fortunate. I can't say that,
Yes.
It's not all without us issues, but and when you mix it with money, it does tend to bring out some of it.
It brings out vultures.
Yeah.
I've said that, where you've got those sharks nipping at the tank and they're sitting there just waiting for a hand. As soon as that hand comes out, they're biting. Have you seen some of those instances in your family relationships, or that you've been fortunate enough not to see?
I wouldn't say none, but I think it's been established. Again, it's, kudos to my father for the planning of, at least having some structure, but if it's wide open, I think that's what also having good succession planning, it avoids a lot of that. I think a lot of it, if it's clear, it's not going to be challenged. Yeah, I know, like I said, reaching out to some of my other extended family, I've seen examples with the well, so you have to run through those scenarios of what if. It doesn't mean the intent doesn't mean you're going to give great intent of why that money was passed out in the first place.
When I'm working with clients, something that I tell them is you can't always think of every single scenario. Something is going to come up that you're not. But to try to cross all of those items off of your bucket list to make sure that, the money is spent the way your vision is, or whatever property is carried on, what have you. Because family members, if you don't put some sort of guidelines on there, oftentimes that money is what they're receiving, and they're just taking it and spending it in not always the way you would want to see that. So, family's family, but still at the end of the day, they have outside influences, whether it be habitual outside influences, or it could be friendly dynamics where you've got friends or family members that are children in their ear. And they want, we know that you're going to be a beneficiary to this estate when you get that money, and then we're going to go on vacation. You go buy that Dodge Julie with that money.
Well, and I think the other part about the outside influence too is, if you've ever heard of the bidlow clause, if I might talk about that, but Heather and I, like if a spouse passed, even my mom, unfortunately, she hasn't had any predators, but you know how it is. There's they'd have a few filters to get through, and I might not be as rash, but she's had really no desire. If the right guy came along, that's not saying that it wouldn't be difficult, but we could obviously support her. But you want to filter those intentions with waterboarding and a contract.
That's right.
Yeah. Because, and the same thing with Heather and I, like according to her, men are worse than women, and she said, I'd find this first Lizzie that came along. So you can predetermine and put their intentions to the crucible of, I want to be this person's companion, and happiness versus I'm not just out to dig that gold bar out of the backyard.
That's right. No gold diggers coming in with that bimbo that's trying to.
Yeah. Or same thing with her, the male, like she can't.
Yeah.
And I think, we both, and I think it's, again, that's just an overarching piece of this thing that you're talking about. Okay, here's where it's going to go. Here's how it's going to go. You're going to exclude. And I think that's perfectly all right. And if you need to have money to track them, at least quantify it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Then you have to have something in there, whether it's those strings again.
Yeah.
Or the strings attached on them. All right. Well, I've seen it in my work in the trust department and this was a trust that was probably done back in the 50s, said that if my wife should remarry, she doesn't get anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that was,
oh, wow.
Yeah, that was done years ago. So she may have this individual, she may have had some friends or acquaintances over the years that were.
Maybe sin, so she didn't have to.
Yeah, so she didn't have to and lose the farm. But even at that point, it kind of makes you wonder, why did they put that in there years ago? Maybe that was an attorney that said to do that.
A jealous streak.
Or maybe there was a jealous streak. You don't know what was prompting.
Maybe ownership or a little bit, maybe overbearing, but there's no out of us said, we obviously want your spouse. I would think he's one happy, but still protected.
Right. So you protect them from themselves or protect them from other vultures that are showing up at the door that don't have good intentions.
Yeah.
And now, okay. Now you talked a little bit before about things on your wife's side of the family. You guys have been doing, we're just talking about some funding and so forth that you've done. Do Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I feel really fortunate to have a blended family. It's an Indian culture from East India. So my wife's father is from Delhi. He came to the United States when he was 17.
Right.
Married a green-eyed Irish girl from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And so it's been brought with that deep Indian culture. We've made several trips back there, and he's been a huge influence on us financially and culturally. And there's, like every culture, it's not all good, but I think that the hybrid is usually better if you can pick the good. One of the things about growing up in a country with billions of people is you have to stand out, and what we take for granted. It's about the American dream and opportunity. Like, unless you really see that firsthand, you can't appreciate it. But they're hyper attuned to the vulture tendency. And one of my favorite stories is Heather and I were young in our career, and we had vet practice. We were doing really well, but we were choosing to stay in. And then it was actually a family friend that wanted to invest our profits. And it was an Irish offshore tax shelter. We were dumb. We're like, we just got hit with our first tax bill. We're like, we had to do something this time. And her dad just happened to be coming through. And as he often communicated, it was this Indian paragraph of what to do. So he just happened to sit down. So in this meeting, of almost ready to sign documents to basically give all our excess earnings over to this investor. We didn't know. We were in our late 20s. And he said, this reminds me of a story. And he said, two baboons were fighting over a piece of bread. And the monkey said they couldn't decide what was fair, like how to divide it up. So the monkey would take a piece and tear it off and then eat that and try to square it up. And in the end, the monkey eaten all the bread. And he said, the parable of the story is keep the effing monkeys out of your life. And he looked up at these investors there and said, this is the worst deal I've ever seen. And he basically just no holds barred said, get out of here. This is the worst deal ever. You're trying to steal from my kids. And we were like, are you sure this is a little extreme? And it was the best of ever. Because then we eventually got into different investments. We're able to really grow wealth rather than just cap it out. Again, these vultures are everywhere, and it ties into the whole succession planning and how you keep it growing to its maximum. There's no way to not be at least involved somewhat in that. But no, that was Paul.
What a great mentor to have. Well, if he wouldn't have been there in the right time, right place, I mean, you and Heather could have given your, what you've worked so hard for overseas, and it would have been gone. Maybe it would have been good, maybe not. It could have taken you years to get that money back, to be able to use. So, what a great mentor to have, to be able to help teach and show. And he probably was, like I mentioned, was very astute to this because he's been used to, he grew up in a country with billions. And there's all these people tripping in your ears all the time, and to be able to weed through who is the good and who's the bad.
Yeah, it was. And again, I think the diversity of your investments and just his overall knowledge of business and experience. I think that's where, the more multi-generational, because I look at where even my kids are now compared to where I was when they're miles to where we were. But a lot of that is just sharing some of these. We've often talked about, just the basics of tax accounting, just financial management, which is really, if you don't do that, you don't have anything to pass on. So it's all about how do you enjoy and grow and then prepare without making it all about preparing, just kind of that balance of using your resources that you've been blessed with.
I'm glad that you shared that, Dr. Bruce, because I think that's so important that a lot of parents or families are, because they never wanted to talk about it in the past. It was all taboo. We need to talk about it, but being able to teach and share this information with our children in the next generation, because how are they going to learn? But either you learn in school or you learn by the school hard knocks. But why not help set your children up for success and teaching them as much as you can while you're available to do that, while you're still here to teach them.
Yeah. Before your brain turns to mush.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Fortunately, not that they know, but you know how it is. It's just one purpose. And then the grandkids.
Hopefully. Yep. And keep passing that on. And they may not be following in your footsteps as a doctor of veterinary medicine, but all of the other things that you're passing on and teaching them and sharing.
Yeah. One of the data points that I've recently come across that has stuck with me, and it ties into like your choice or just your influence of family in general, but 80% of people never leave their religion with birth. So I'm kind of stuck with this question of imprinting and the value that we can give our kids early on. So that those family values, they're constantly watching us no matter what we think, even into I think our kids, it never stops if they're looking at us for example. So I think it's so important to get along, to conflict resolve, to set these examples of how to behave and how to make our. It's the government. It's really just how, the expanded thing. You've heard the family, the stronger the family is, the stronger the country is. So no, I think you're in a really, really hugely important area. And so literally, it's just my dad. I really dove headlong into trying to prepare.
So you've made some headway. You guys have learned a lot from what you've seen on your wife's side of the family and your dad's side, and the things that you want for you, Heather, to make sure that you put together a good plan to care for your family, your children, your grandchildren, the things you want them to know, and the importance of the family unit. And that's all right. Well, very good. Is there anything else, Dr. Bruce, that we have left, any rock that we've left unturned or anything that you could think of that would be helpful for our listeners as they're working on their own estate plans and trying to figure out how they keep it's not something that you can accomplish overnight. It takes time to do, as you've seen as well. With any words of wisdom, anything you want to share?
I just think that time goes faster than any of us can imagine. And it's a cliche that we hear over and over. The sand goes faster at the end of the hourglass, all those things. And that's in a good, well-lived life. And, when a tragedy might enter. So I think it's time really well spent. And there is a peace of mind. We say, I'm just learning as I go. It's definitely educating yourself and having, no matter how rudimentary it is, you just start with a will of like, this is my wishes, and then building on that. And it depends on, the size of the assets in the estate. And I think the more involved you could bring the younger generations into it. And I think that's the shift that I really like to see, is it's not this surprise, I'm dead. Here you go. And say, hey, we're in this together, and how can I help? And then to see some of that before you die. That would be my dream, is to be able to see the effects of some of my dreams and goals that I want to happen, whether it's in the veterinary industry, whether it's in the humanitarian space, really not just have a chunk, but and get the kids involved in that as well. So not just recouping them, which I think we've done a decent job of.
So you find that your family, you've done a great job of guiding them, and they're coming back to receive some of the, I want to say, fruits of your labor, but you're seeing them full circle with some of the things that you really envisioned. You're seeing that come full circle with them, and some of the giving of their time and talents and so forth. And I'm not just talking monetarily, but on a charitable side.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Well, by any means perfect, but I think some of that is just exposure. Like you plant the seed, and that's all you can do. So they see what might be done. And I think the recognition of the American privilege, and I know it's not equal across the whole country, that we're living in a little bit of a bubble here, which I'm grateful for. And like just awareness, education, exposure can't replace those things. Those are, I'd say, valuable beyond money. So those trips would take.
And being able to have that too, those memories to have.
Yeah, together.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. Well, I think we're getting to the end of our time here on the second half of our episode. So I appreciate you coming on today, Dr. Bruce, and sharing your past experiences, what you've dealt with the family, your knowledge and your wisdom, and for every family to know that it's not easy to do a plan, but you just have to dig in and start someplace. Because if you don't ever start, you'll never finish it. You don't start the race.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And it can bring you together and make you closer as a family too.
yeah, absolutely. For sure. Yep. Everyone knows what their intentions are and lay them out on the table.
Yep.
And have it. There's no secret surprises at Christmas time where you're opening up that package and not knowing what's in it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, very good. Well, yes. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate you being on as a guest. Yes. So thank you for listeners for tuning in today. Appreciate the likes and the shares. If you like what you're hearing, feel free to share it with a friend or family member. You can connect with me at pathfinderlegacy.com. And at the end of the day, if you don't have a plan, you don't want to be walking through life blindly. Make sure that you have a plan in place, and it's a plan that you want to see that family legacy carried on. So, all right. Until next time, I'll see you between the ditches.
Thanks for listening to the Pathfinder Legacy Podcast, where your future is our focus. Be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and visit us at pathfinderlegacy.com to start building your transition plan today.